And this is Love Kills by Hank Harrison, read by Bradley Dahlberg. We're now up to Chapter 6, Tortuga Verde and the Vat Rats. It's too complex for a poem, The Last Days of Peace and the Wars to Follow. Alan Cohen, The Last Days of Peace. Try to remember what happens when divorced parents take their grudges with them. When one parent tells a kid a strange parent is evil, sick, or unloving, the kid loses about 50% of their self-esteem, especially when the told to information is a lie. This happens mainly because the kid has no way of checking. In Courtney's mother's eyes, I must have been one evil bastard, because someone in Oregon told my daughter I was dead. They didn't count on me getting famous. Raising normal kids with two well-adjusted parents can be a minefield, so imagine how tough it is for a kid with no parents or feuding parents. Divorced kids live in such a confusing world that the negative is almost always balanced above the positive. The bad rapping parent facial gestures, tone of a voice, and attitude convey far more than the validity of the information. Parents with an attitude convey far more validity of the information. Parents with an unforgiving agenda usually try to sell their viewpoint with an empathetic body language, but it's a brainwashing technique. It intimidates kids and takes them out of the decision-making process. Pretty soon he or she is trying to please everybody and a massive core neurosis forms. Brainwashing, bribery, and child manipulation should be illegal. They carry with them the deleterious effects not counted by the so-called behavioral modification experts. In addition to the downright dishonest nature of the contract, the child eventually realizes that he or she can control the whole deal by holding a little longer, whining and being disruptive. The parents are the lobbyists requesting certain actions, and the kid is the senator waiting for another campaign donation. This automatically puts a Der Kinder on the top of Nobody Wins. Pretty soon, your kid meets other kids with a common bond. When the kid gets old enough to go shopping, they discover an even wider array of tools to use against the adults. By the age of 12, kids know the real fire lance they can use to get their way is a self-destructive scenario, viz. If you don't buy me a car, I'll kill myself. This translates to, if you don't do what I say, I'll devalue myself in public. Or I'll need to be more right, then I need to be more real. Luckily, Courtney was strong-willed to begin with, and managed to retain a good chunk of her self-esteem, even when she was kicked around in the foster homes and brainwashed at least by 5 different shrinks. But in the spite and the help, she got a long way. It was far more inevitable with my kid. She would probably be self-destruct mainly because she was miserable, and I was made to be the scapegoat. Courtney got into snorting, smoking, injecting white powder about 1983, and I got really scared. I never stopped loving her, but I moved on. Everything between us was out of focus after that. Over the years, I saw Courtney progress in various masks, almost as if she had been brainwashed. She had seemed to be stretching to impress too many different parents, from too many different classes, of a merciful mother, surrogates, and foster sibs. 2 years after my visit to Slim's Club, another disfranchised friend of Courtney told me that Frances was in the bus the night of my visit, but Courtney had the baby stashed. She told her employees she was afraid I was going to kidnap Frances, and on their way to Portland, she spent the overnight stay in a motel in the oddly named town of Weed in Northern California. Sadly, this town is less than 10 miles from my mom's place. My mother knew the hotel manager, who was not only Frances Beans, but also played with her in the office. They could have easily stopped by the family home, however mind-blowing that could have been, but Courtney just didn't give a damn. I could see how she might still hate me, but that's why she takes it out on her mom, too. In late April 1994, I got my answer. 3 weeks after Kurt died, grieving widow called to chew me out again. She had my number all the time, and I asked her to let my mother see the baby. Courtney's reply was, "Hey man, what did those people ever do for me? So much grief." Flashback, Christmas 1993. Courtney didn't call me. My mom, then 84 years old, doing poorly, was noticeably disappointed. Something was radically wrong. Most of the time between November of 1993 and March 1994, I figured whatever the hassles with my son-in-law was experiencing with Courtney had nothing to do with me. I forgot temporarily that in 1983 Courtney hated me enough to try to kill me. When Kurt died, I realized that Courtney was still on the hate train. When Courtney saw me at the Geraldo show in May of 1994, she continued bad rapping me in public. It was almost like she was blaming me for Kurt's death. At no time did she have anything nice to ever to say about me, but I sensed some bad logic in the deal. Her violent attacks suggested she had something to do with Kurt's demise. It was as if she was confessing. It was as if in her mind part of her personality that badgered Kurt came from me. By 1995, I realized her escalating comments as she knew I suspected something. I just held my beloved bulldogs. Nothing she could say or do could hurt me more than realizing my daughter had something to do with the death of the most important poet of the 20th century. That's when I realized I was seriously on the warpath. I had to be destroyed, silenced, or compromised. Instead of calling a truce, she had just plowed ahead with her character assassination. I wasn't sure I was enough for the puzzle parts, but it was as if it turned out I did right. There in my family album, the family scrapbook I was keeping before Kurt died, was all I needed to understand what happened. It took me a while, but eventually I saw the light, and Kurt didn't kill himself. He wasn't murdered. He was assassinated. He was a dangerous bad boy, rejecting the wealth and accumulating political power like a reborn Spartacus, and he was costing several easily angered people tons of money. Courtney coiled people into bad rapping me in every chance she had just because she feared I would continue my investigation into the death of the son-in-law I never met. What did she have to fear? She tried to make it look like I was prying, that I was trying to rip off Kurt's good name. She was spared the absurd party line that a writer needs to know personality face to face in order to write a biography. But behind the bluff and the bluster, I see the little girl standing in the middle, waving a red flag at a bull. She may have thought she was able to handle what she was about to experience, but I knew she couldn't. She spent too much time putting me down. She forgot to check out what I had stashed under my bushel basket. She and I stared at least one gift, a photographic memory. She never talks about her memory because it's a secret weapon. If you know how the Ediac mind works, you'll understand a lot more about what went on. Her constant barrage and put-downs didn't faze me. Her salvo only dented the fuselage. I knew that she was a wannabe field marshal like her mother, but she couldn't have the experience of the education. My one fear at the time was that Courtney would eventually wise up and hire someone with the really big guns who would eventually kill Catriona and I, and that didn't occur either. Several people, including Courtney's hired shamus, Tom Grant, didn't stay in the limelight for the self-protection. Since the day that Kurt died, my research with the feel-good grounds of the popular support from Nirvana fans, I also got the ugly emails and the dirty looks from the old friends, mostly deadheads, people I assumed would be supportive. It turned out these old, rebellious, now rich hipsters believed the media hype and Courtney's spin doctors and assumed I was basking in the reflection glory, and my relatives dumped me completely. They saw Courtney as a big star, and we all know big stars can do nothing wrong. Several old friends who I thought were super hip turned out to be really stupid, and they argued that even my daughter killed 6 children. I should be supportive. What? I couldn't believe it. Parents continually turn against their kids when they have committed heinous crimes. Even Tom Grant turned on me. I realized I had been retired too long. Writing the present book was my way of climbing on the initial shock of Kurt's death and its implications. I felt alive again. This renewed clarity of my mind gave me the sense to see that Courtney was protesting too often. Had she come to me with the baby, I might have been deflected, but her off-the-wall attacks gave her away. Courtney was setting the ground rules. I could sense the nonviolent desperation in her voice and her appearance in the American AOL. She was using her control and her fans online for disinformation. Obviously, she had an eye-to-eye agreement with AOL because less than 1 year later, Kurt died. Courtney could get anybody blocked, simply by accusing them of violating the TOS Terms of Service agreement. Free of speech be damned. 2 days after it began, Courtney's folder was one of the most lucrative draws for AOL from the time when customers was deflecting to Hotmail and Yahoo like rats, like a big clown in a small circus, like Trump on Twitter. Being a star in a social network was especially ego-lifting for Courtney. She had a lot of money to silence me. She knew that if she was going to do the battle with me, she was going to need expert help. I'm guessing at least $250,000 of Kurt's money trying to box me in. But I pulled a rabbit out of the hat. I did the same thing to her that didn't cost me anything. Instead of talking to me, she decided to arm wrestle, and she didn't offer to pay me off. She just liked spending money and getting her friends to attack me. I won every round. It was like child's play, mainly because of catfishing on several boards as women who loved her, and I waited as she was drunk and stoned and willing to confess. Eventually, Courtney's fans saw me as proxies bullying her. What they only never found out was behind the curtain. Ironic, eh? Bully hate, its tables, and it's turned. Life in the juvie stole Courtney's humanity. In 1985, she had a continuous stream of junk, addicted riot girls around, and just to set them all into my house, like it was a crash pad. Over several months, her pals stole books and mementos and jewelry, even the kitchen pots and pans. But one example of pilfering stands out. I kept a wooden monkey head on my mantle, a souvenir given by Harry Harlow at the University of Wisconsin. I visited his lab in 1966 when Courtney was in the hospital there. Anybody who took Psych 101 knows about Harlow and his simplic totem, and the reflector eyes and the black peg nose, and the head, the real terry cloth mother. I looked at that thing every day. The head seemed creepy, but it had given to me Harlow himself. When the trophy head went missing, I got real pissed off. Whoever took it knew it was and what it meant to me. It was taken to inflict pain, and since it had no intrinsic value at the pawn shop, or controversially, maybe it was the ultimate doll part. The Green Tortoise, an alternative tour bus company, became sex, drugs, and rock and roll vending booth for Courtney and her pals, especially Elizabeth Payton, we will discuss the detail later. They would get on the bus with pills and pop off the other ends of the pockets full of cash. The loose bus subculture allowed her to hone her skills in the dope dealing. She scored Percodan, Trank, Speed, Diet Caps, Black Beauties, and Triple Cat narcotics. These pills were acquired by conning local doctors and paid for through the illegal use of her half-sister's health insurance card. When the bill caught up with her family in the Portland, Courtney conveniently blamed me for those charges. To this day, Courtney's Oregon siblings think that I ran up a bill in Jamie's credit card at the clinic in Palo Alto. Now where the hell did I get the card? Well, I get it. Courtney told her sister and her stepfather that I robbed her for it. What was she doing with it in the first place? Oh, I know. She changed her name to Jamie when I went to the clinic to have a pull-up removed. A certain clerk told me frankly that they were going to bust her, and if she ever showed up again looking for opiates periodically, this period ended in another violent confrontation because Courtney loves drama. So much for the tough love. But I hadn't given up on her yet. It took another year or two to realize that she was really trying to kill me, get me busted, screw me up in the old lady, mess up our Myra in other ways. I know that she kept a hit list in her daytimer, but she had no idea that I was at the top of that list. That's the end of chapter 6. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. This is Love Kills, read by Bradley Dahlberg and wrote by